Alright, so we're going to be talking about writing functions today and evaluating them as well. So your learning target is I can write and evaluate functions given a scenario. So we're going to answer the question, what is function notation? And function notation is a way to write an equation. Okay, we're used to equations like y equals 2x plus 5. That's kind of common to us, but a function notation is just a different way to write it. So it makes it so that instead of using y, we use this thing called f of x. Okay, and so let me explain this a little further. It lets us know that that the equation that we are actually solving is actually a function. Okay, so you're going to write in function for this first blank. So it lets us know that the equation we're solving is a function. Remember what a function is. A function is one where your x never repeats. X only has one option, right? Remember we used the vertical line test when we saw graphs, and we just looked at the domain, those x values, to make sure no numbers were repeating. So to use function notation, we need to take this, we're going to use y equals 3x plus 2 as an example. Honestly, the only thing that we do is instead of writing this y, we write this little symbol right here, which means f of x, or your function depending on x, is equal to 3x plus 2. And that's how you would change an equation and write that in function notation. So your key concept here, in order to write a function given a situation, the first thing you're going to want to do is identify the independent and dependent variables. That's just like what we did in the last lesson, except we're going to take it a step further with step 2, is to identify a variable to use in place of the independent variable. So instead of like time, we're going to use t, or instead of miles, we're going to use m. It just depends on whatever you want to put in for that variable. And then that third step is to write the equation with the dependent variable written as the function notation. Okay, let's do an example. So example 1 says to identify the independent and dependent variables and then write an equation in function notation for the situation, and this is the situation. It says a math tutor charges $35 per hour. Okay, so the first step is to identify the independent variable and the dependent variable. So remember, in order to identify what the independent and dependent variables are, the first thing we need to do is identify what those two unknowns are. And those two unknowns, it looks like, is the amount of money that we're going to receive and the time in hours that it takes. Okay, and to determine which one is the independent variable, we need to decide between those two, the amount of money or the time, that needs to be known in order to figure out the other one. Okay, and we know that we need to know how much time is taken in order to figure out how much money we're making. That's funny. So an independent variable would be our time, and we put that in hours, which means our dependent variable is the amount of moolah, money, that we get from that. All right, so we've identified what our independent and dependent variables are. Now we just have to actually use a variable to put that in for whatever our independent variable is. Okay, our independent variable is time in hours, so let's go ahead and identify h being hours, and then we're going to write an equation in function notation. So we are going to have f of h is equal to our $35 per hour. That means we're multiplying here. We're going to have 35 per h. Okay, and if we look at this makes sense, right? If we spent an hour working as a tutor, we'd make $35. If we spent 2 hours, then it'd be $70. Okay, so that equation, that function, makes sense to us, and that works. All right, example 2 works on actually evaluating functions given input values. Okay, so it says for f of x is equal to 3x plus 2, find f of x when x is equal to 7 and when x is equal to negative 4. So we're going to need to solve this a couple of times, but I'm going to first write out our function again. F of x equals 3x plus 2. And we have to determine what is f of x when x is equal to 7. So this is much like solving an equation using order of operations, but this is how it looks for using a function. So instead of this x in the function of notation, we're going to use 7. So what that means is the function evaluated at 7 is equal to 3. So instead of x, we're going to substitute that 7 in there, plus 2. And then it's just solving using order of operations. First, we're going to have to multiply. 3 times 7 is 21 plus 2. And so the function evaluated at 7 is going to end up being 23. So f of 7 is 23. Now we do the same exact thing. Let's go ahead and rewrite the equation. We've got f of x equals 3x plus 2. And we're going to evaluate this time when x is equal to negative 4. So f evaluated when x is negative 4 is equal to 3 times negative 4 plus 2. And it's just like PEMDAS again. 3 times negative 4 is negative 12 plus 2, which gives me a final answer. Negative 12 plus 2, going down my elevator up 2 more, is going to be negative 10. Negative 10. So f of negative 4, the function when evaluated at negative 4, is equal to negative 10.